Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and today on Session 0 I have Tom, who has a game out called Blood and Sacrilege. Now, if you like vampires, and you like medieval England, this might be the game for you. We have a great conversation about that game and then something new that he's producing. So if you want to know more about that, keep watching. I have my Dungeon Glitch shirt on, as usual, and it is super comfy and super awesome, and the designs are great. If you want something like this for yourself, go up to gemfirefly.com, and when you find what you're looking for and you go to checkout, put in our code BADLY15, BADLY 15 at checkout for 15% off your order. Also, I'm going to have a link to the video that I shot with the creator of Gem Firefly. So keep a look for that. It'll either be down below or it'll be one of the tabs up above. And that way you can get a chance to meet Matt because he's awesome and you get to learn all sorts of crazy stuff about him. So either way, Tom is right around the corner. I can't wait for you to meet him. That interview starts now. Hey Tom, how are you?
Hi Mike, I'm good. Just moved house, so I've got half a bed behind me, but apart from that, I'm happy.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. We've been trying to get this done for a little bit. It's just been partially house moving and partially scheduling, but here we are. So you already have a game out called Blood and Sacrilege. Why don't you tell me all about that?
Sure. So Blood and Sacrilege, the first kind of proper full game I made. I made it over the lockdown period. I was furloughed for about a year, so I pretty much worked on it full time. Just had nothing else to do. It's set in a area based on the early Middle Ages of England. So think the kind of era that Vikings were in. It's about vampires, and they used to rule the region there, Brackenstow. The humans won a holy war against them, and the vampires fled to the tunnels below the city. And now, 100 years later, they're kind of peering out, figuring out how they can get it back. And so the players are kind of playing the bad guys still, evil vampires, but they're actually, I suppose, oppressed by the good forces. So you're still playing the bad guy, but you're trying to resist someone above you too, if that makes sense.
That does. It actually sounds kind of interesting because you're kind of, as you mentioned, you're the bad guy fighting the good guy, but the good guy isn't necessarily always the good guy either. So
yeah.
So from the standpoint of what type of characters can you play? I mean, obviously there are, is it just kind of one vampire class, or do you have subclasses, or?
Yeah, so it's based, do you know Blades in the Dark by John Harper?
I've heard of it. I don't know that I've ever played it.
So it's built in that rule set, which is called Forged in the Dark.
Okay.
And in that you have playbooks, which is an individual character sheet. And then you also have a crew sheet, which is like a single sheet that everyone shares. And you have things like upgrades on there and stuff. So in Blood and Sacrilege, you still have playbooks, and then you have a broom where you can upgrade your lair. You can get a carriage, you could get guards, you could get special abilities for your brood. And there's, I think, 5 brood sheets, and they kind of define what you're going to be doing as a brood. So you could play a profane brood, where you're trying to fight against the holy and celestial. You could play a ruinous brood, which is all about trying to crush their economy. So if you think about old medieval wars where they would throw dead pigs over the castle walls and cut off trade routes, they're kind of trying to siege them out. So you're not doing anything direct, you're kind of eking out a victory by starving of resources. So the broods kind of define what you're going to do in the game as a group. And then splitting off from that, you have your individual character sheets. And I kind of based them on all the different tropes or like folklore around vampires. So for example, you have a feral. You could play like a wild animalistic vampire with long claws and fangs. You could play the knave, who is kind of like one of the vampires from Interview with a Vampire.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So they're like a corsair dressed up, like to dabble in secrets and manipulate people. You can be a Valentine, which is kind of the stereotypical sexy vampire. He's going to try and seduce people, and they have one of their abilities I really like. They have special admirers. So every session, a different NPC will buy them a gift, and then the GM and the player get to discuss who bought them the gift.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is good fun, and yeah, there's 8 of them. Yeah, just try and cover all the different tropes and various vampires you see in movies and books.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Actually, I'm in my head thinking about brood stuff. Actually, so as a character, put it this way: as all the characters come together, are they the brood?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, the players make the brood. So at the beginning, you form a brood in blood, kind of make a blood pledge with each other to have this brood and to overthrow the humans together, and you're all going to reign together. That's the kind of instigator, I guess, at the beginning.
Yeah, I immediately think of Interview with a Vampire when they were in, I think they were in France, and they ran into that old coven of like vampires, and you know the craziness that ensued there. So that's a pretty good visual.
Yeah. Interview with Vampire is a really good touchstone. Another really good touchstone is the BBC Dracula series, which was set in a similar era at the beginning. It kind of goes through a long period of time, but the first few episodes are set in that era. But one of the reasons I wanted to make Blood and Sacrilege was because I actually really struggled to find games or movies set in that era in England, in like a kind of a medieval England with vampires. It's not very popular, and I think it's really cool, so I wanted to explore it.
Well, I mean, that's what creators do. They create things that they want for themselves first, right? And hopefully everybody else likes it too.
Yeah, hopefully.
So how's it been doing? Because when did you release it? Was it last year?
Yeah, I released it last year. I released it on itch.
Okay.
itch.io, and yeah, it was my first game, so my budget was very low. I just kind of first time I made something like this, and just wanted to see how it was, and you know how I work in it, and get a feel for going through the process.
Sure.
So I spent a bit of money on some nice artwork, and apart from that, I didn't really spend any money on it. So all the marketing and promotion I did was just through Reddit and Twitter, basically, and on word of mouth. So yeah, I think I'm fairly happy with how it's gone. I've sold about 50 copies. You know, it's nothing to go crazy about, but I think it's a nice little start, and I've recouped my art investment. So yeah, on to the next thing, try and go a bit bigger this time and put more money into it and see where I
go. Well, that sounds like a fun game. I'd play it. Vampires as a whole are always fascinating, and being able to play one is immensely powerful. So it seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for an RPG as well, tabletop RPG, because it's that instantly accessible. You know, you're a vampire, this is the era you're in. You're like, cool, I'm in, I get what's happening here.
Yeah, right.
Very, very accessible idea.
Yeah. Well, now you have something else that you're working on, which I found interesting and also rather alarming, being diabetic. But why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's very early days. I've been working on it for a few months. I got my first playtest coming up next week, and I really wanted to do something that was just really different from what I did before, not kind of dark and horror fantasy. I'm really interested in unusual settings or unique settings. For example, Elden Ring, I think, does that really well. Monster Hunter does that really well. Any setting that they've kind of twisted an environment and then looked at how it would make that environment different. So I wanted to do something like that, and I thought a really cool concept was a massive desert where all the sand is sugar, and how that's impacted the wildlife, the plants, the culture around it. So it's called, at the moment anyway, it's called Into the Sugar Desert. And so my first playtest next week, so I'm excited to test it out. I've been kind of writing the setting mostly. I've got some really simple rules for now to not make it too difficult to test, and kind of add rules as we go. So the big inspirations for the setting were things like Raya the Last Dragon, Journey, the video game, and Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, which is an old animated film. I think in particular Nausicaa is really cool, because I really like how they use things like, they have these giant insects called ohms, and they have big lenses that cover their giant eyes, and they use the lenses as like a kind of fake glass. And I like Journey, there's a lot about discovery and exploration, which are themes I really want to focus on. And Raya the Last Dragon, my kind of current idea for Sugar Desert is that the players are going to be seeking these ancient or mythical artifacts that are going to, or legend has it, are going to bring rain back to the desert and kind of make habitable land again. So I think Raya the Last Dragon is a nice touchstone for that.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like, so now your very first playtest is coming up. How do you even prepare for that?
It's a very good question. I just put something basic together with the rules, so you don't want it to be over complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And although the game is going to be kind of open-ended, like the players are going to be able to look at this big map and decide where they're going to go and what they want to do, the playtests are going to be, for now, a lot more scoped in and focused. So I'm going to sit down and just say to my players, this is what you have decided to do.
Right, yeah.
This is where you're going. Yeah, and just test that one little bit for now. And then as we get more comfortable with the setting and the rules, start to scope out a bit and let them have a bit more free flow and control over where they want to go and what they want to explore. Yeah, for preparation, it's really just putting something simple together with rules. I actually just posted something on my Twitter, which was kind of basic playtest sheet, which I'm going to use next week.
Yeah, I'll have all that stuff linked down below so that way people can take a look at it.
Yeah, cool.
That sounds like a lot of fun. When you have these kind of crazy environments, it's a lot of fun for somebody who is visually driven in these games. Your original game is where can people find that? Is that still up on itch, or do you have it through drive-through or any other sites?
Yeah, so at the moment it's only on itch. If you go on my Twitter as well, it's like pinned right at the top. I've never published on drive-through. It's something I'm going to look into for my next game. Definitely, it's probably sensible to put it on more platforms. Going back to what you're saying, sorry, about imagination in games and kind of people struggling with imagination in RPGs. I think that's one of the things that made me feel excited about the Sugar Desert idea, because every time I talk to someone about it, they immediately come back with about 5 ideas for weird animals that would live there or a certain biome or something. I think it's just really a good sign for a setting that it's going to capture people's imagination and they're going to be able to improvise in that space and make things up on the fly, which obviously is really important too.
Absolutely. I think the mark of a good game is inspiring people to think of what's outside the box or what's not already created and how they can kind of customize the game for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that is going to be interesting to test out as we go through the play tests. I'm going to try and give players a bit more freedom to say, well, maybe this is here, or maybe sugar works like this, or, you know, have their own imprint on the campaign or the sessions. It's going to be really fun to see what people come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited about that. I can't wait to see how that progresses. I do a little goofy thing on my show where I call it a lightning round, and it's a couple hard-hitting questions, and I just want you to answer with the first thing you can think of. That way, everyone who's watching gets a chance to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Cake or pie? And I don't know why I asked people from the UK or anywhere in that area cake or pie, because they invariably say cake because pies for you guys is savory. It's not a sweet treat.
Well, I'll blow your mind and go pie because I'm not really a sweet guy. I like savory things a lot more.
Yeah. I've had so many debates with people. It's great. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Spring or fall?
Pretty fall or autumn here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of my favorite seasons.
So out of all the vampire classes that you have in your game, which one do you think is your vampire? Which is the one that you would be playing?
I think my favorite is the Nightmare. I think it's the one that just stands out to me as it's not really archetypal in other RPGs. It's basically like the idea of horror vampire that's terrifying and mentally tortures people and stalks you in the night and invades your dreams. Just kind of archetypal horror villain.
Oh wow, that does sound terrifying, actually.
Yeah, it's really fun to play.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Last question: what was the first RPG that you ever played?
Really boring. It was D&D. It was 5th edition D&D about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. my friend was setting up a campaign. I was in the pub with him, and I basically begged him to allow me to be the 5th player because he already had 4. And I really wanted to just play an RPG. I'd never done it before. And yeah, I just got completely obsessed from like the get-go. That was it. I was immediately trying to make stuff and tinker with things. And that's very common with indie developers. Is the moment they played something, they immediately want to change it or break it.
Yeah, right. I'm going to tell you, you're having done a lot of these interviews now, I would say you're absolutely right. You know, it's every system that they play in, it leaves room to be rewritten. Like there's a tweak they can see here, a tweak they would make there, or what have you. And invariably, that's the reason why people create their own stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just the insatiable need to see what it would be like if you could do it differently or put your own personality on it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming on and sitting down with me, and I can't wait to see. I'm really interested in this whole sugar desert idea, because I already have in my head. I'm trying to think of what the ecosystem is like, and monsters, flora and fauna, things like that. I mean, it is a desert, so, but I mean, there's still an ecosystem there.
Yeah, I'll give you one snippet of my favorite biome that I'm working on so far. So it's split into 4 regions at the moment, which is the geothermal melt, which is a area with geothermal activity. There's treacle geysers, there's a towering caramel volcano, and a burnt sugar basin at the bottom where all the sugar's black and granulated.
Sounds delicious, actually.
Yeah, kind of like a creme brulee, but a region.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, creme brulee. Haven't had that in decades. But I do appreciate you coming on, and I will have links down below to everything that we've talked about in this interview. Please keep me informed of how the playtest went. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I will. I definitely will.
Okay. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Cheers. Nice to meet you.